In this chapter, we're going to take a look at Beat Reactor and Audio Visualizer. Beat Reactor is built into certain Continuum effects and allows you to drive the properties of that effect to a sound effect or music. Audio Visualizer, on the other hand, is something that you can use with motion graphics where you can create frequencies or waveforms, distort them and stylize them to respond to music or audio. Let's take a look in the Chapter 9 sequence. If you're following along with the exercise files, just give the Beat Reactor sequence a double click. And I just have one clip in here that we're going to start off to take a look at Beat Reactor. Now, there's a few things that we want to do before using Beat Reactor. So number one is I like to load in the audio source that I'll be referencing. I can look at that here in the Avid timeline, but we will be referencing the audio externally. So more on that in a minute. First off, in the Beat Reactor bin, right click and choose Input Source Browser, where I'd like you to link to the music to use waveform file, which you'll find in the Avid Assets for Import folder in the Chapter 9 Beat Reactor and AV folder. So I'll link to that first piece of music. So the music to use, great. And let's now begin. So first of all, we want to choose an effect that has access to Beat Reactor. In the effect palette, I'm going to head over to the film style category, and let's use one of the first effects that we explored in this course, which is film glow. I'll drag and drop that to a clip, head into effect mode, and let's first of all see the film glow. I'm going to increase the intensity and, most importantly, decrease the threshold. Okay, we can see the glow and its radius. Now, here is the top section where Beat Reactor is. I'm going to reveal the properties by clicking the disclosure triangle. Let's enable it. And we'll see that we get a warning here saying, hey, you need an external media file to be selected. So this is where we have to go select our audio. And we're just going back to the folder, the Beat Reactor folder, where we brought in the music. And we'll choose to reference this waveform. So now you see your image and an overlay UI representing frequencies in your music track, and it's also color-coded. This isn't going to do us any good unless we have the audio in the timeline as well. So I'll head to my bins where we've already brought in that music to use. I've added some in and out points to it, and I'm just going to drag and drop it into the timeline and then just extend it a little bit. So now we have this reference of the music followed along with the waveform. So I'm just going to play this back. Okay, and we can see these frequencies responding to the music underneath, but being referenced by an external audio file. In the effects editor here, I'm just going to expand this track and let's make a couple changes. So underneath Beat Reactor, there's a ton of properties for you to become familiar with. But at the very bottom, we have some audio spectrum and graph options, which can help us out. If we go to the spectrum, we could change the resolution of our frequencies to give us much more detail if we set this to 1024. But in this case, I'll set it to 64 just to get a bit more. And I'll play this back. And we're looking to do two things. One is we want to choose a property that we'd like to respond to the music in this case. After we've chosen the property, we want to then choose certain frequencies to have it respond to those. At the very top of this effect, under Audio Apply Options A, just above that, for the apply parameter, rather than have it be unused, let's set it to glow intensity. And now you're going to see a gray overlay on top of the frequency graph. And we're going to control this by using the two sections down here, sample corner 1 and sample corner 2. I'll grab the X value of sample corner 1, and I want to sort of position this over the red frequencies here, these three. And I'll now adjust the X value of corner 2, getting close as possible to those frequencies. And then we could play with the Y value. So we can have it respond to these entire frequencies. Now that we have this box, if I draw your attention to the right, this represents the output graph. So if I just play this back, you could see that the glow intensity is responding to these frequencies that I chose. If you're finding that this output is too high, there's a few things that we can do to help control this. One is that we can make our sample corner tighter or larger. So you'll see here that I'm selecting much more of a range up here, which these frequencies never hit. It makes the output less strong. And we can see, in fact, that the glow doesn't respond as intensely. The next thing we can do underneath the apply options here is an output minimum and an output max. So we could raise the output minimum so that this only starts to respond once this graph hits a certain amount. So this would be about 20% up. We could also do the same thing for output max. Output minimum and output maximum give a minimum and maximum value to a property. For example, we might always want to maintain a small amount of glow as it responds to the music, which we can do by dialing the minimum value up. We could also repeat this so that it doesn't go above a certain value by setting the maximum amount. Playing around with this, as well as adjusting the sampler box, can have an effect on the overall animation of your property to the chosen audio source. The great part of Beat Reactor, if I close out the Apply Options A, is that we can control up to 3 parameters. So if I come here to Audio Apply Options B, we can now choose another value. So just above that, this time I'm going to choose Glow Threshold. And you can see it change right away there, as in we're controlling the threshold amount. Now, I'll sample another set of frequencies just higher up here. So changing the sample corner 1 on Beat Reactor and the sample corner 2. And let's just adjust the Y so we just get a much greater output. Let's take a look and see how the threshold value now affects the intensity. So because the threshold value is responding to the music, it's not set as low as it originally was on this shot. We could actually decrease the output minimum and even change how the effect on parameter works, if that's what we're looking for. Now, if I change this to anything else but threshold, like radius, we'll see a much larger response. Now, keep in mind that in Continuum 2023.5, we added Beat Reactor to a ton of Continuum BCC Plus effects, so you could take advantage of controlling properties and things such as video glitch and other glows that we have within our collection. Now that we've taken a look at Beat Reactor, I'm going to come here to the beginning of the timeline and move both my audio and my video down here in the timeline to make sure that I have some filler room right here. I can now go to my effect palette and apply the next effect that we're going to take a look at, which is going to be under the BCC time category. It's called Audio Visualizer. So we're going to apply it to the clip, and right away it's looking for us to select some external audio. And we could do that right away in effect mode. So I'm going to select that audio, and I happen to have a heartbeat here. I'm going to just press open to apply it. And we can see here that we have at the audio style of frequencies here of our audio, and it looks somewhat similar to Beat Reactor. So first things first is we're going to go back to our bin, and like we did before with our last audio source, bring it into Avid so we can also hear it. In this particular case, I'm going to choose a frame rate of 23.98 and then close out that source browser window. All right, to get this audio in the timeline, I'm just going to switch over to my edit workspace and double click that heartbeat audio. And I actually want to make, in this particular case, an in followed by an out point in the timeline over this filler video clip. And I want to clear the in and out points on the clip that's here in the source monitor. And now that that's set up, I can just press overwrite and I'll have it there in the timeline. And you notice I can see the waveforms because I've enabled them from the hamburger menu in the timeline. Let me go back to the effects workspace, followed by my effect mode, so we can see this clearer and how it's responding to the audio. So as you can see, this does what it says. Was as I scrub through this, it allows us to visualize our audio either using frequencies or waveforms as a base. So if I come here to the top, change my audio style to waveform, I get a different graphical view. And similar to Beat Reactor, when we saw the overlays of frequencies, we do have control over the resolution, all the way up to 512. I'll settle on 64 in this case, and we could play with how the style of this visualizer looks. So right now it's set to dots, but I could have that set to single dots, and then I could choose what the dot style is. So have it as circles or ellipses, and even set this up, the vertical style, as bars, which will have a different look overall. So depending on what you select, just going over here, the waveforms, we could start to also play around with the scale of the waveforms, its width and height, and the density to create our look. So just keep in mind, depending on what you choose, if you choose waveform, you have control over waveform settings. And if you choose frequency, you can tune your frequency down here in these exact sections. Now, once you have chosen your base for your visualizer, there are then a ton of other sections here that you can use to warp or stylize this. So for instance, just like we saw with atmospheric glow, all of the various categories that are available, we could add some film glow right here to those waveforms and increasing the radius. There are also two unique ways of distorting this waveform as well. One, which stands out, is polar warp, which is going to throw your waveform here on a circle with the angle, not to mention the inner and outer radius. And you might notice as I bring in the outer radius closer to the inner radius, I actually get a repeated set of waveforms in this case. And just like we've seen with other effects, this specific section has a wrap enabled, which allows this to tile on forever. In addition to polar warp, another really handy feature is mirror. If I enable that, we have the waveform mirrored, and we can also play around with the edge of that mirror. So I'll just set this value to be an even 90, and then we can play around with its center position and where it happens to be located in relevance to the first visualizer. Now, since there are so many categories, and we could also position this in 3D space using either pre or post transform properties, I do recommend heading to the top of the effect here, where we can go to the effects editor and choose from one of several presets here. And the best part is, while we can't hear music, we do get a visualization of how this might look once we bring it inside of Avid Media Composer. Now, certain elements here at the very bottom, like waveform single 2, were created by John Dickinson, and he recommends that in some cases you use these in conjunction with other audio visualizers. So with this one, he's saying try combine it with the single dot mirrored 1. So let me apply mirror 2. I'm going to just twirl up the audio visualizer properties, and I'll head back to my effects palette where I'll option click and drag another version of Audio Visualizer onto the clip. Let's select the same audio source externally, the heartbeats, and this time head straight back into the effects editor. In that case, we were looking for the single dot mirrored 1. So I'll select that, and it says, of course, combine with single dot mirrored 2. Let's apply that, and right now, based on the current setting of background for this, we're not seeing the first filter of Audio Visualizer applied. So we need to go to background and just set this to source. And all of a sudden, now you'll see the first mirror option. And these are combined. Even better, we could take one of these mirrored sources. Let me just move to a frame where we can see it responding to that heartbeat. Go into the global transform settings, which is also your gateway if you wanted to adjust this in 3D space, and just increase the scale of that visualizer we just added. And by the way, we can rotate it or tumble it here in our space, and even combine it on top of our footage or our text graphics. So there you have it, being able to use two effects to have music respond either to certain properties of an effect using Beat Reactor, or create visualizers for your music or your visual effects with Audio Visualizer.